What happens when the world's most famous couple checks into a luxury resort, only to find themselves the targets of a shocking conspiracy? Watch as they uncover a web of betrayal and public humiliation that threatens to shatter their peace and their reputation. It was an unusually warm winter's day in Scottsdale, Arizona, the sun casting a golden glow over the desert landscape as the Camelback Vista Resort stretched out before Melania and Donald Trump. They had chosen the resort for its reputation as an oasis of tranquility, far removed from the chaos of public life, hoping for a rare moment of peace. But from the moment they stepped out of their sleek black SUV and into the grand lobby with its polished marble floors and crystal chandeliers, something felt off. Melania noticed it first: the curious, almost pointed stares from the resort staff, the subtle shifts in their body language. It wasn't the usual mix of admiration or even curiosity that she was accustomed to. No, these looks felt different, suspicious, hostile even. She dismissed it as paranoia. It was hard to move through life as she did without encountering those kinds of reactions, but something deep in her gut told her this was more than just another instance of unwanted attention. The check-in process was painfully slow. The receptionist, an older woman with a smile that seemed just a bit too forced, fumbled with the computer. There was no one else in line. Melania exchanged a glance with Donald, who gave a small shrug, his expression unreadable. "It'll just be a moment," the receptionist said, her tone colder than it should have been. The couple settled into their suite, an opulent space with floor-to-ceiling windows offering stunning views of the surrounding desert. Yet the luxury of the suite couldn't mask the oddities that followed. Room service was delayed by over an hour, and when it finally arrived, the server barely made eye contact. The dinner order was wrong, and the apologies came in the form of an uninterested sigh, as if the mistake was insignificant. Donald, never one to remain quiet, muttered under his breath as he paced the suite. "This is what you get at one of the top resorts in the country?" Melania, ever the diplomat, urged him to let it go, but deep down, she couldn't ignore the uneasy feeling gnawing at her. Something wasn't right. The following morning, things escalated. As they made their way to breakfast, Melania overheard a waiter muttering under his breath. She only caught a few words, but the sting of "foreign gold digger" was clear enough to make her blood run cold. Her hand tightened on Donald's arm. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, her voice shaky. Donald hadn't, but he saw the change in her demeanor. The storm they had hoped to weather in peace was growing louder. By the pool, the animosity became impossible to ignore. The staff seemed to intentionally ignore their requests. Drinks went unserved. Towels weren't brought. Every interaction felt as if it was being orchestrated to make them feel unwelcome. Donald, now visibly furious, called over the manager, demanding an explanation. "We've been here for hours, and this is how we're treated?" The manager, a man with a practiced indifference, offered a dismissive apology. "We're short-staffed today. Apologies if your experience isn't up to par." But Melania and Donald both knew it wasn't just poor service, it was deliberate. "This doesn't feel like a coincidence," Melania murmured, her voice trembling slightly. "But what can we do about it?" By midday, the tension in the air had become so thick it was tangible. Whispers had turned into open murmurs of disapproval from guests who had noticed the odd behavior of the staff. Some went so far as to openly mock them behind their backs. It was no longer a series of mishaps, it was cruelty. Melania and Donald kept their composure, though every interaction seemed to chip away at their patience. A lunch order arrived cold, and the server was unapologetic. Donald's frustration boiled over when a staff member laughed after he complained about the meal. His anger was evident, his voice firm as he demanded to speak to the general manager. The manager's arrival did nothing to calm the storm. "I'll look into it," he said indifferently before walking away without offering a solution. Melania leaned in, her voice low. "This isn't normal. They're not just being inattentive. They're being cruel." Later that afternoon, Melania wandered into the gift shop while Donald took a phone call on the patio. As she browsed, she overheard two staff members chatting near the counter. They didn't seem to care that she could hear them. "Can you believe she's married to him?" one of them sneered. The other laughed. "Anything for money, I guess. She probably doesn't even understand half of what he says." Her hands trembled as she placed the item back on the shelf and walked out without a word. When she told Donald about it, his face turned red with anger. We're not going to let them treat us like this. Not here. Not anywhere. But it was the final straw that evening during their private dinner that truly crossed the line. The waiter, as if on cue, seemed to take great pleasure in spilling a glass of water onto the table. Oops, he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Not everyone's happy to see people like you here. Donald shot to his feet, fury in his eyes. Excuse me, what did you just say? The waiter shrugged, his smirk unwavering. I think you heard me. The murmurs from other diners grew louder, and Melania felt all eyes on them. She placed a hand on Donald's arm, attempting to calm him, but the moment had already escalated beyond repair. This is harassment, Donald shouted, ensuring that everyone around them could hear. We came here for peace, not to be insulted by people who should be doing their jobs. The situation reached its peak late that night when a knock on their door startled them from their thoughts. The general manager, flanked by two uniformed security guards, stood at their threshold, his tone sharp and accusatory. We've received complaints from staff and guests about your behavior, he said, as if the couple was at fault. Donald's voice was icy with disbelief. Our behavior? Your staff has been harassing us all day. But the manager simply raised a hand to silence him. This is a peaceful establishment, and we don't tolerate disruptions. If this continues, we'll have no choice but to ask you to leave. Melania stepped forward, her voice steady and firm. You're blaming us for the actions of your staff. This is unacceptable. The manager's response was a silent retreat, but the damage was already done. Melania and Donald knew they had to take action, and fast. In the morning, Melania and Donald made their way to the lobby. This time, it wasn't just the staff who watched them. Other guests, now aware of the tension, began murmuring among themselves. Some approached the couple to express their sympathy, while others seemed to revel in the unfolding drama. It wasn't until they arrived at the front desk that the true depth of the conspiracy was revealed. As they demanded to speak to the resort's owner, a cleaning staff member nervously approached Melania with a folded piece of paper. Inside was a list of employees and roles, accompanied by cryptic notes, one of which stood out. Target high-profile guests to drive online buzz. The revelation was shocking. Melania turned to Donald, her voice shaking. It was planned. They wanted this to happen. With proof in hand, they took immediate action. Donald contacted their legal team, and soon enough, the resort's owner was on his way. When he arrived, he was confronted with undeniable evidence of the orchestrated harassment. The resort's management apologized publicly, but the damage was done. As the Trumps prepared to leave, Melania reflected on the larger implications of what had occurred. It wasn't just about us, she said quietly. This is what happens when people think it's okay to dehumanize others for a laugh or for attention. The story went viral, sparking outrage online and in the media. The resort's reputation crumbled and bookings plummeted. In the weeks that followed, Melania and Donald used their platform to speak out against mistreatment and the dangers of exploiting people for publicity. The incident, while humiliating, ultimately became a victory for accountability and justice. In the end, it wasn't just about confronting their personal mistreatment. It was about standing up for the values of respect and kindness that should govern all human interactions.